Chapter 21, Section 4, Antietam, a Bloody Affair. The Battle of Bull Run ended Northerners' hopes for a quick victory. In the months that followed that sobering defeat, the Union began to carry out the Anaconda Plan. The Anaconda Plan in action. Step 1 of the Anaconda Plan was to blockade the South's ports and cut off its trade. By the end of 1861, the Union Navy had closed most ports in the South to foreign ships. The South had long exported its cotton to Great Britain and France. The Confederacy urged Britain to recognize it as a nation and send ships to break the blockade, but the British could not risk angering the Union, a source of vital grain imports for Britain. Britain needed to eat. The British refused the Confederates' request, and France would not act without British support. As a result, the South could not export cotton to Europe or import needed supplies, so they began to starve. In early 1862, the Union began to put Step 2 of the Anaconda Plan into action. The strategy was to divide the Confederacy by gaining control of the Mississippi River. In April, Union Admiral David Farragut led 46 ships up the Mississippi River to New Orleans. This was the largest American fleet ever assembled. In the face of such overwhelming force, the city surrendered without firing a shot. Meanwhile, Union forces, headed by General Ulysses S. Grant, began moving south toward the Mississippi from Illinois. In 1862, Grant won a series of victories that put Kentucky and much of Tennessee under Union control. Grant refused to accept any battle outcome other than unconditional or total surrender. For this reason, U.S. Grant was known to his men as Unconditional Surrender Grant, because those were his initials. Later, in 1862, Union General George McClellan sent 100,000 men by ship to capture Richmond. Again, a Union victory seemed certain, but, again, despite being outnumbered, Confederate forces stopped the Union attack in a series of well-fought battles. Once more, Richmond was saved. The Battle of Antietam. At this point, General Robert E. Lee, the commander of the Confederate forces, did the unexpected. He sent his troops across the Potomac River into Maryland. That's kind of in the north, a slave state that remained in the Union. Lee hoped to show his strength, then that might persuade Maryland to join the Confederacy. He also hoped the Confederate victory on Union soil would convince European nations to support the South. On a crisp September day in 1862, Confederate and Union armies met near the Maryland town of Sharpsburg, along Antietam Creek. All day long, McClellan's troops pounded Lee's badly outnumbered forces. The following day, Lee returned to Virginia. McClellan claimed Antietam as a Union victory, but many who fought there saw the battle as a defeat for both armies. Of the 75,000 Union troops who fought at Antietam, about 2,100 were killed. About 10,300 were wounded or missing. Of the 52,000 Confederates who fought at Antietam, about 2,700 lost their lives, so more than the North, while 11,000 were wounded or missing. In that single day of fighting, more Americans were killed than in the War of 1812 and the Mexican War combined. Almost 5,000 people killed in that one day, and that was more than those two wars combined. The Battle of Antietam was the bloodiest day of the war. There are bloodier battles, but they lasted for longer than one day. The new realities of war. The horrifying death toll at Antietam reflected the new realities of warfare. In past wars, battles had been fought in hand-to-hand combat using bayonets. During the Civil War, improved weapons made killing from a distance much easier. Rifles, which replaced muskets, were accurate over long distances. Improved cannons and artillery also made it easier for armies to attack forces some distance away. As a result, armies could meet, fight, die, and part without either side winning a clear victory. Medical care was not as advanced as weaponry. Civil War doctors had no understanding for the cause of infections. Surgeons operated in dirty hospital tents with basic instruments. Few bothered to wash their hands between patients. As a result, infections spread rapidly from patient to patient. The hospital death rate was so high that soldiers often refused medical care. An injured Ohio soldier wrote that he chose to return to battle rather than see a doctor, thinking that he had better die by rebel bullets than Union quackery, which is unskilled medical care. As staggering as the death toll was, far more soldiers died of diseases than wounds. Unsanitary conditions in army camps were so bad that about 3 men died of typhoid, pneumonia, and other diseases for every 1 that died in battle. As one soldier observed, "These big battles are not as bad as the fever." Holy cow.